First of all, good afternoon and thank you for having me here. And good evening or good morning in Brazil. As you can say, Matthew, my apologies for keeping you up. But I always know you're thinking about me, so I presume that's where it is. And I generally, first of all, I want to say that I'm fairly clueless about the platform, but I've discovered it through people who have navigated me through this journey. And probably the learning which I've had today is that you never say never about learning, right? You never know where it's coming from. You never know who's going to take you through it, and you never know where you're going to land up. I never thought I'm going to sit on a blue box, sitting on a stage that I didn't know where I was going to be. But that's the beauty about trying to find yourself. My name is Naveen. I've been with Amazon for the last 3 years, Amazon Web Services, and I drive growth and scaling for startups across the world, but primarily in APJ in the region. So APJ is Asia Pacific and Japan. Uh, it's one of the most vibrant ecosystems across the world, with markets like India, which are having a unicorn breakout every few weeks, to mature markets like Japan, who have really got founders who are very deliberate across the rest of the region, right? So I have the privilege of doing that. Prior to AWS, I've spent a couple of years in Microsoft, Sun, Oracle, and a bunch of other companies, learning and getting educated on how do we scale and build platforms globally. And in the process, I've probably learned a lot more from the founders who have been part of my journey on how they've shaped and built businesses across the regions. That's me. Thank you and glad to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Naveen. And I mean, with your wealth of experience, and I think you're really humble there. And I think, the part on learning with founders, hopefully you will also find some really good exchange, through the discussions later on with all of these different entrepreneurs here. And yeah, I think we can get started. So maybe as a start, maybe share with us, why is product market fit such an important topic when it comes to starting up your idea, right? I'm sure you've seen many founders struggle with this, or when they first start looking at this, they have no idea what product market fit is about. So if you could just give like a quick 1 to 2 liner, what exactly is product market fit?
So first of all, before I get into product market fit, I would like to just take a cursor on that. We have founders who strongly believe in solving problems that impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Problems that resonate with them, problems that gravitate them to solving and making a difference in the world. And I call that the founder problem fit,
Mm-hmm.
because the founder and the problem has to fit each other for the founder to understand the pain and the value of the gain they're trying to unlock with the product or the platform or the business that they are envisaging. So first of all is, prior to product market fit, you have to have a founder problem fit. Because if it doesn't speak to your cause, your ability to read the product for that market is very late. So
Mm.
it has to be something that resonates with you personally. And that's what we've seen with successful founders who probably understand founder problem fit first. And you
Mm-hmm.
see this globally when the personal journey. By product market fit, we talk about when the resonance or the solution that you propose is so vibrant that the person whose problem you're solving is willing to pay for it, and pay for it in a manner in which they find it utilitarian, not just for themselves but for the creating what we call a network effect. And that's what happens, because when you actually have a product market fit, the product sells itself more than you selling it. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty about the product market fit. It signals that the business gives you for that. And third and most important is you have the solution market fit, which scales you across multiple geographies, and you address the market execution risk which is there. So that's probably where you would probably look at that.
Wow, I mean, there's three different concepts that you just brought out there, right? Founder, problem, fit, right? I
Yeah.
think that is definitely something that so just last night, a lot of them are still trying to figure out what idea they're supposed to be working on. So I think that
Yes.
is a really, really relevant point that, if you could elaborate a bit more on that later on, I think that would be very helpful, because I think a lot of people are struggling, there's so many things I can work on. Which one should I work on, right? So many different problems out there, right? And I think that the second part when you mentioned on product market fit as well as solution market fit, right? So these are also two different areas that we definitely want to dive into just in a bit. Matthew, do you want to just bring up the next question that we have prepared?
So, sure. So Naveen, like, what are some best practices that participants can adopt to validate their product market fit?
So, Matthew, that's a very good question. And the reason why this question is so critical is about understanding the signals that tell you that you've got product market fit. what I would do is first to start with uh, founder problem fit, and I will say that stay loyal to the problem, not to the solution. Many people tend to get gravitate towards the solution first in everything we do. So example is, I have decided my solution is a hammer, so every problem looks like a nail. So I've decided that. So I've decided the solution because that's my most comfortable area. So first of all, which is there is when you're looking for understanding the solution problem fit or the founder problem fit, what you do is first stay loyal to the problem, not to the solution. So whatever comes to you naturally is not probably, it's probably one of the few things you should consider. But I think you should first is go and talk to your customers. The reason why I'm saying this, and I'm talking to your customer, not just your consumer of your product, right? So you have to go to a customer as a person who pays you for your product. And the reason why this is so deep rooted in what in at Amazon we call customer obsession is you have to go core to the customer who you're talking to and understand whether the problem they have is an incremental problem or a quantum problem, right? So the reason why I'm saying this is because what's the stamina of the problem? How much is it, how long is it, and how much are you willing to pay for it to reduce the friction or the challenge the problem presents? Now the reason why this I say this is because if the problem has long stamina, you definitely have long term returns. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
short term problem, then you have short term returns. So the longevity of the solution of the business, you could solve a one time problem and then say it's a profitable business, but you need it to be a sustainable, predictable problem, which is a long term problem that you're solving at a incremental level or a quantum level. Incremental level gets you what I would call differential returns, whereas quantum gets you quantum returns, right? So the area which is there is you're looking for a problem you're gravitating towards, which is persistent in the customer's mind, wanting it to be solved, that is, which has stamina, which the customer wants to be solved at a price point that needs to be paid out for. And the differentiation on how you solve it or the experience on the way you solve it is as important. And many a time the payment of that is done by engagement. It could be done by the network effect of having others join you, or the utilization of the product, and of course the payment of the product itself. So many a time when people envisage the problem, you have to see the problem over a long period of time and the predictability of the problem. Sometimes there are some problems that become commodities, so sometimes it's not worthy of solving the problem because sooner or later the solution becomes free, whether you like it or not. And the reason is, so therefore, when you gravitate towards a problem, you have to also look at the economic yield of the problem and the ability to resonate with a problem which has an economic yield is what we call as a business. Because if you look at you can solve problems that are there, but if they don't have an economic yield or the value people are willing to pay to get that problem solved persistently or sustainably, is where what it makes what I call a product market fit business. So when you come towards a solution that helps you scale and address a problem that is sustainable, persistent, and gives you a return, is what we call as an inflection point in product market fit.
Wow, thanks, Naveen, for that. And I think maybe as a participant right now, they only have 1 week to get started on this idea, right? So how can I'm just thinking from a participant standpoint, in this 1 week, what can I at least do to try to, get a bit of sensing whether this is actually, something that consumers will pay for, and that is a long-standing problem, right? Like something that actually has economic value. So what do you think what tips would you suggest for participants to kind of take on, and that they can try to do something like that in this week to try to validate that?
So sometimes, so generally speaking, many a time, timing is everything, right? You could have solved the problem ahead of the customer needing the solution. So many a time you say that this technology breakthrough is ahead of the curve because the market yet hasn't found a need for it. So timing is very critical. So the reason why I'm saying timing is very critical, and to your question, Steven, is what I would recommend is a suggestion. Is first is understand economic trends that are going on. The reason I'm saying this is because you want to you want to ride a wave, or you want to take on a wave, but you don't want to go in a sea where there's no waves, right? So you need waves, and waves are themes or thematics or challenges that the economy or the macro environment presents to you. So you'll see waves in certain categories like industries. We've seen travel seeing over a period of time seen challenges over the last 18 to 20 months. There are certain categories that are where are systemic issues which are beyond, because right now the current environment has ensured that certain business have got appended, right? So you can't certain play in certain categories. So pick your category or your vertical or your industry very well,
Okay.
because you will ride that industry's wave whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, is the challenges that are coming in will definitely be there because we are seeing this universal. Now, you could go horizontal and solve this problem for multiple industries, or you could pick the industry that you know or you feel resonant, and then you could expand gradually. So sometimes, when we've said this, you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. The advice is that pick a vertical or an area where you resonate with and go solve the problem first for a set of customer or cohort, and then scale it out. So that would be the second area which is there. Don't try to solve it completely if you can't. And while you're talking to that, so if you first identify the vertical or the industry, broad macro trends that are happening, that's a very quick way to do it. And you can find that through basic secondary research that's there on the internet. The second area is that your personal insights on that industry could be, you could hone in and pick a vertical or an industry. The third area, which is very specific, is you will always see that a problem is, or the industry has a category or an area which is commoditizing it and an area which is differentiating it. So if you see it in the spectrum
Mm.
of, say, example, customer experience and management example, we all believe that today in current
Mm-hmm.
time we all are digitally connected, right? So we are on this platform
Yeah.
called Gather, right? So what does happen is you suddenly realize that there are enough conference call platforms. And so what someone has done is created this virtual map of Gather, which looks
Mm-hmm.
at times like, like a walk through Disneyland, because you're guiding me. I don't have a clue about where I am at times, but what you're doing is showing me a way in which I can navigate it. So suddenly looking at saying that while I have one-on-one meetings with 20, 30 people, having 50 to 100 people meetings is where it's a challenge, because even on Zoom or any other platforms, the tiles can't be seen, so you cannot see everyone. So
Yeah.
maybe this view of this is a way to uniquely solve this for events. Now, I'm just giving this as a real example. It's not an endorsement for Gather or not, but I'm just like walking through what I would probably look at. And then based on that
Mm-hmm.
problem statement, then resonate with this event, and then probably say, okay, here's an event where I can see a top line view of Jack, Rena, Axel, Glenn, and a bunch of people in the audience, which I would see, and then I'm seeing this on a stage with all three of you being part of this. So maybe there's a unique way of showing that how virtual events in the future can be played out and from a virtual
Mm-hmm.
environment. So what you've done is now gone from a broad problem statement of an industry to a particular vertical or a particular town. And then you probably have come back to here now in this environment. The most important thing which is there is talk to your customer. The
Mm-hmm.
reason why I'm saying this is, I would rather get checked by my customer saying that what you're telling me does not make sense today than building a product or a prototype and then taking it to customers, because then the cost of that is too high.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do believe, yes, that you should have an idea of the kind of solution you're going with, but I think you should lead with the customer and find that input. And that's a very important metric, irrespective of how you're doing this, because what you're doing is taking an input from your customer on the value they are willing to unlock from from the solution you propose for the problem. And in the process, you'll realize that whether it's really a $1 billion problem or $1 million problem, but you choose the value of the problem, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what resonates with you. And from there, you look at the capabilities of the people who resonate to this cause. Now, Eve, you and I you're running this event, and I'm so passionate about you, Matthew, being awake at like 3 a.m. in the morning. So I'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe in this place, you should probably have a coffee counter and a Red Bull counter, which is there, which you can click on this and say, while we are on startup weekends, maybe you should order our coffee, which should come to me in 30 minutes, and then
Yeah, that would be
that will keep
awesome.
Matthew awake, right? So now suddenly what you're doing is this could be just a commodity platform, but what you're doing is now adding a value to it which differentiates it and engages real world coffee, or sorry, Matthew, maybe Red Bull or whatever else is your choice of beverage to keep you awake, is something you may try and do. So that's just an approach in the way you're navigating it. It's not like that's the right answer, but what
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to do is go towards the customer which is differentiated, and that's one thing which is there.
Yeah, we will definitely try that in the next run, Naveen, and you have to come and join us and check that out if we make that happen.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, I hope all
Yeah,
of
it
you
could be
yeah, sorry.
no, and to your point is that many a time you don't have to always build a solution. You can leverage solutions that are there in the industry.
Yeah.
There are API calls that are there that can make your platform richer. See, many a time, the reason I come to this is sometimes we get so emotionally connected with the problem. Then on the other side is that we want to build a Lamborghini when the customer wants a jeepney. You know what I mean? In Asia, in
Mm-hmm.
Philippines, you have a four-wheeler which takes you from point A to point B, but you
Mm-hmm.
go and build this magnum opus solution that is going to take a lot of time and money to unlock. So you have to also understand the maturity of the customer willing to solve their problem. Sometimes
Yeah.
all they need is a paracetamol, and you don't need to give them like a toolkit of 40 other medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes you can solve that very quickly.
Yeah, and I hope all of you that are listening, the participants, you guys are taking down notes because Naveen has just dropped so many, good tips for you guys as to how do you even narrow and identify, what is the right problem to solve. I really like the part on the industry trends and, keeping in track with that, right? Because I think yesterday, some of the teams that, we're working on this hackathon involve things like sustainability, but it's so broad, right? There were people looking at food waste, there were people looking at alternative different types of proteins and stuff like that. There's so many things that you can work on, but how do you actually find the right one and whether it's the right timing? That's also something that Naveen pointed out, which I think is a really, really good point to take note. So, and how you guys can use your research to actually help with that. And customer validation, right? So that's also something that we will, through the next few days, you guys should be talking to potential users of your solution, right? And it's super, super, super important when it comes to identifying, what is appropriate for you to actually put into your solution, whether it makes sense. And yeah, so I hope you guys have taken down all these notes because these are really, really good pointers. Ayami, do you have any question that you want to raise from to Naveen as well?
So I think Naveen gave some really, really interesting points that I also learned a lot from this session. I think a
Okay.
common question that
So I think there are a
I
bunch of
have as
questions.
well,
So
and
what
a
I
lot
want to
of
do is,
people.
there was a good question from Mark C saying, can you comment on finding
Sure.
product market fit, specifically when your startup deals with a marketplace type concept where the product serves an intermediary, for example, a doctor or a patient and a patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, it's a good question. So what does happen is when you're looking at industries like healthcare, and you are engaging in what we call customer trust, because healthcare is very sensitive as a topic. You have to also understand that this market is very regulated, and the reason why I'm saying this is because you are not just dealing with customer data, which is PII. You're also dealing with the doctor's obligation towards the patient. So it's an environment you've got to understand and navigate. Now, many a time there have been approaches where telemedicine, or there could be an area of federated of a patient realizing what problem they have, or they're going to a place where they can actually engage with a doctor or a service provider on the platform where they could unlock value. But the challenge which is there is we never know what we don't know. So that's something which is there, which is very critical, especially in industries like that, which are fairly regulated. The ability for a person who is in a dire need of emergency care, understanding what's most relevant for them. So unless you have like a, what I call a coach or a curator or a facilitator like Eve and Matthew here, who like a general practitioner who tell you, like, based on what you're talking, you think you have fever, but you have something else, like someone guiding you. So otherwise, if it's a pure play marketplace without a curated experience, you could end up, having being not in a very good place. So sometimes you have to navigate this place very carefully, and that could be one area which you may want to keep in mind as you're looking at subjects and industries, is not just the barrier of entry but the barrier of executions, because barriers in terms meaning areas in which you will probably have to navigate compliance, regulatory requirements, as well as credentials of doctors, and understanding patient specific needs. So if you're looking at anything around that area, I would strongly recommend that you spend some time reading about it. There are a lot of compliance norms like HIPAA and related areas which you may want to spend some time. This is just a suggestion, and I'm sure you'll have a different way for it, but I'm just yielding on that problem. The other area which is there is, I think, to Eve, I would just want to tell, like, in the next few weeks as you're doing the hackathon, start becoming your chief problem evangelist. So you don't tell, you make the problem the biggest deal and say who are all affected by this problem. So before you come up with a solution, find out who all agree it's a very big problem to solve. So if you become the chief problem evangelist and you find people both offline in the world you're living in, because I'm sure the problem is gravitating towards something you had seen or experienced, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just have discovered the problem without experiencing it themselves. Some of the biggest founders have found startups when probably, when they had support, when they had called a customer, enterprise customer, or a particular brand or electronics company and not got a response, and they realized that, what, their customer support was really crap, and maybe I can build it. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So they have probably experienced the problem themselves, or they've seen someone near or dear around you. So just see the scale of being the chief problem evangelist, because
Mm-hmm.
based on the number of people who resonate with the problem, you will realize you have a problem that's quantum, not incremental.
Okay. Thanks, Naveen. And I think one question that I think participants may face as they start going out to speak with users, and I think you definitely have a wealth of experience on that. What happens if you have conflicting comments from your potential users? How do what is the right way to approach it when you have conflicting comments, and how should you be processing that?
So when you get comments from users, you should ask them what is. So I'll give you an example, right? If I invite you to my house and ask you, tell me, how did I take care of you today for lunch? And some people say, yeah, good lunch, very good lunch, very politely, because they don't want to offend me, right? And Matthew is looking like he's zoning out, so I need to make sure I get him some coffee. And while we're doing that, so Matthew will say, yeah, whatever you guys eat is fine, dude. Let's just get it over with, right? But the issue which is there is that you should take input from people who have got skin in the game. That means, are they willing to pay for it and then comment on it?
Mm.
The reason why I always, and payment doesn't always have to be money. Payment can be saying, can I introduce you to 5 customers? And then I'll tell you your product is crappy or some input. Then, I have some skin in the game. So
Okay.
don't take input from people who don't have skin in the game. Find a way to make sure you distill and filter out the noise. Everyone has an opinion on everything in the world. And I'm not
Yes.
asking you to take opinions. And even within customers, if there are freeloaders, you may want to distill it out. But if there are customers you see is high value or high category leaders, or people who are willing to pay or willing to cover the cost of a POC. So I was saying, what, if you do this, I wouldn't mind paying for it. Like, at least sense that, then you'd probably get that opinion. So you'll have to filter out the opinions from value to valueless.
Okay, that's a very good point there. Ayami, I think Ayami had a question to raise earlier.
So what I was interested in finding out is what are the tools that early stage founders can use? Like what are the tools,
So while
methods?
Yami's coming in, I think someone asked me what's my role at AWS, and so what I want to do is I want you told me to keep this very simple, right? So I'm going to explain what it is. So
Okay.
product market fit is
Yes.
like a vehicle and a car. So think it has 4 wheels, right? And just because you press the accelerator doesn't mean it goes front. It could be going backwards, right? So sometimes it goes sideways also, or it could go horizontal, right? So many a time when you're looking at a problem and you're looking at the highway, or think the destination is where you want to take your solution or your business. And the problem is so much is the gasoline in that car is the problem that's like emotionally connected that you want to solve. And the funding or the people who give you some money or are willing are the skin in the game to get this car moving on that road or highway. So what just generally happens is product market fit is also a signal when before product market fit and after product market fit, when you go into growth and scaling and execution. The area which is there is, if you start testing your car and you don't see anything on your dashboard, that means you're not yet in the direction of where you want to go, because you don't know which are the metrics you want to track. Your dashboard has to tell you you're going north or south or west or east or whatever else, right? It's like your navigator, right? So your directions or your metrics tell you that. How many passengers are in you are probably your co-founders who want to ride with you. Some people say, no, you're a crappy driver, whatever, but it's the noise. There's 3 or 4 people in that car. Now, whether it's a Jeepney or a Jalopy or a Porsche or a Lamborghini or a Tesla, it doesn't matter, but it's the vehicle that's taking you to the destination. So are you good in this for it? And what's the signals it's giving you? So your ability to read that environment is what keeps you and gets you. And whether you're regularly getting what I call pit stops. So are you reaching the pit stops so that you can fill gas on a regular basis? That gives you signal from the petrol gas station that tells you, okay, you're in the right direction, right? So you need to get those signals for you to feel that you're in product market fit.
Okay. Okay.
I
So.
have some signals for that. One of the 4, 5 big signals that you have got product market fit are: number one
Mm-hmm.
is that you've got repeat customers. So people have used your product. So sometimes you can sell a value and the customer may buy a different value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just because people buy doesn't mean that they're buying what you're selling. They are probably buying what they think they are understanding is the value you're articulating. So first of all is you need repeated customers for the same product proposition. So
Okay.
it's a sustainable problem.
Mm-hmm.
The second area, or there's repetition in usage. The second area which is there is many of the deal sizes are predictable, meaning you can't have one deal of 100K ACV and another deal of half a million ACV and one deal of 10K ACV. So are you selling to the right segment, right? So you should be very clear which segment you're selling to, and are they coming back to buy your product? So the sales velocity is the same, the segment you talk to is the same and consistent, and the
Mm-hmm.
duration you take to sell. So you can't close a deal in 30 days and another deal in 200 days. There's something wrong. So if everyone discovers your product in, like, say, 3 months to, like, 60 to 90 days, you know that that's your product market fit, because you know the magic of making that happen. It's like very much like the recipe your mom and dad have at home for cooking food. If you
Yeah.
accidentally make a great meal and you eat it and you like it, it may be great. But if you don't have a repetitive process of creating the same recipe every time, then you probably don't hit product market fit. So the
Mm-hmm.
ability for you to predict sales velocity, uh, what I call economic yield, and time to convert on a regular basis, and a repetitive set of customer cohort you're talking to, is when the signals come that you hit product market fit. Because you're talking to similar kind of people or similar kind of profile of customers who are giving you the same yield over the same period in a predictable manner. So you now know that you've got the recipe, and now you can just take it out to multiple sets of customers.
Yeah, so Naveen, on that means, I guess, from a participant standpoint, that you are in the hackathon, you only have 1 week to kind of get this sensing, right? So I guess maybe a good way is to maybe speak to a certain group in terms of the skill, to kind of get a sense whether this is the right segment. If you kind of see a consistent trend of people responding to you in the same way from that same category, is that usually a good sign in that sense? Just to build on what you've just shared.
Yeah, I think so, because the reason is, and I'll just give an example of a hypothesis Sophia's put in there, right?
Yeah.
So she's looking at building a tuition providing application that's going to actually help low-income families for providing, education on a sustainable basis on these methods. The area which is there, Sophia, is primarily, you'll have to look at it in the market which is there. So I'll give you an example, right? And I'm going to give you 4 different markets,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in 4 markets, I'm going to give you 4 segments. So I'll give you an example. The first which is there is children, because of COVID, who have got impacted, where their low-income families don't have money to even send them to school. So sending them to tuitions is even more beyond that. Like if they don't have money even going to school because their families, the parents or people who are caring for them are not earning income because of COVID. I'm seeing that a lot happen across different
Mm-hmm.
markets. So that's a challenge. The second is people are already going to school but are going through home-based learning. For them to go through another app to discover tuitions could be a friction, because it seems like in a world where physical is limited, I want to have some digital, even more digital connect. The third which is there is differentiation. We're seeing that grow. An example, take a trend from India and certain other markets, and even in Southeast Asia, we're seeing that extracurricular activities is growing exponentially, because now you're not restricted by the teacher or the guide person in coach for your tuition classes. So example, if someone wants to learn singing from in Indonesia, they can learn it from someone in Singapore without physically being there. So digitally now is also opening up the talent pool of the teacher providing that. And then the fourth is supplementary education and the macro trends. You're seeing that there is some bits of regulation coming across Asia in some forms, in the way students are being educated towards. So you'll have to see macro trends as well as see the challenges in that market before you scale. But it's a great area to solve. You want, hit me up, I'll connect you to a bunch of founders who are doing stuff in the space, and you could probably talk to them on their challenges, and I think they'll be far more forthgiving.
Awesome.
Farhan, sorry, what are the key metrics for product market fit? We already reached our customers as digital artists and communicate with them. So how can we achieve the product market fit? So if you're looking at, Farhan, if I understand this correct, is you're looking at product market fit for digital artists, and I presume these digital artists are going to actually be either on platforms on, in the metaverse or in the real world, or in probably digital artists who are now going to be in live streaming, right? It depends on which way of monetizing it. I don't know it. But one of the areas we're seeing is the rise of what I call uh, digital talent that's going to be federated enough for you to at scale. So what's going to happen is in the future, if you actually look around, our digital credibility is going to become more and more valuable than your physical credibility, which sounds very weird. But in an earlier world, if you wanted to do a ref check on someone or an endorsement of a product, you actually went and asked and saw someone like, and said, hey, eBay, is Naveen good enough for him to come for Startup Weekend and speak, right? Or Matthew would have checked in Latin America. But, when you come to Asia, now someone on the web can decide my future. So now, you know what, Farhan, be kind to me, because what you can do is actually ensure that whether I even survive this weekend is going to be based on what you're going to comment about me. And so the rise of digital artists is going to become phenomenal in the long run. So what you're doing is, I definitely believe there's a huge amount of potential, but how you're going to bring this digital artist to bear and transform is going to make a big difference, which is there. I don't know how you're looking at it, but probably you can sync online.
Yeah, and I think with that, we are going to start, the Q&A segment. So I know a lot of you have very good questions for Naveen. So you guys can put up your hand using the emoji function on the platform. We can invite you up on stage to actually share more on, the context for your question. If Farhan, if you're around and you want to come up on stage to actually, elaborate a bit further about what you're asking about, and Naveen can help to actually address it. So if you guys are around, Farhan, you can actually come up and share more. Anyone else that has questions, feel free to also raise that. Yeah. I think Ayami was asking earlier on, Naveen, what are some tools that, the participants can actually use when it comes to establishing product market fit, especially, in current times, it's very hard for them to go out physically to meet with someone and actually ask them about the product. So what are some good ways that people can actually, tools that they can actually use to get that validation from, if they go to speak to a customer, what should they prepare, right? What is good to prepare to kind of get the initial sensing?
So I've generally used this, and I'm speaking from personal experience. One of the best experiences that I've had is to actually spend time talking to the customer who I resonate with. Now I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. So just because I'll give you an example. All of you here are talking about, you're paying it forward, right? By solving it by Startup Weekend, by bringing it this finishing school or hackathon to help early stage founders figure out where they need to grow, right?
Yeah.
Now what you're doing is, you've decided that the solution is weekends because people have more time. Many of them are doing day job gigs on Monday to Friday.
Yep.
You found this, and then you found that there are people across the world who are passionate like Matthew. Sorry, Matthew, I'm going to keep calling on you because I want to make sure you stay awake. The look on your face tells me that you're not exactly excited or whatever I'm saying, but I promise to get you that Red Bull sooner or later. So what does happen is, when you're looking at that process, one of the areas which is there is there are different forums physically to actually reach out to customers. Now, example is, if you're talking to app users, right? You can always figure out a way on certain platforms to push out your app and get early installs to kind of get some telemetry data that's coming in, right? And then try and use what I call UX mapping to understand where people navigate with your product. If you have you built a prototype in your head or in your mind. The second is, go to forums like Reddit, GitHub, SourceForge. Understand what kinds of solutions that are there. Don't go straight navigating, I'm going to build this, right? The third is, go to your customer segment and you can actually talk to them. LinkedIn is a great place to actually reach out. So if you're looking at enterprise customers, you can join forums and communities where you can actually understand this. And one of the best things I've learned from, recently I met an amazingly talented woman. What she did is, she realized that she wants a job in, say, inside sales. So she wrote to 40 CEOs through LinkedIn and said, I want 15 minutes of your time. That's all I want. Now, when you ask for 15 minutes, there is, it's not too much of time you're asking. And sometimes if you present yourself well, you can actually so if you're writing for a problem, then you can write the problem in your subject line. And if you think the problem is so critical and people are even going to open up your response and read and talk to you, it's a phenomenal way. But if they're not responding to the problem or to your outreach, that's also a signal that maybe the problem you're talking is a problem you feel, but they don't feel.
Yeah.
And then the next sit is, if you can't even get to your customers, get to people like, so example is ping people like me and say, hey, Naveen, can you just connect me to 3 customers who I want to check and ask whether, this problem statement makes a difference. So I think the industry is fairly, and the ecosystem is broad enough that there are a lot of us who are willing to help and pay it forward. If you come and you have your hypothesis right and you know who you want to talk to, then doing an introduction is like what you and Matthew are doing this weekend. I could do right as a day job. Doing that is the most basic thing you do, because you never discount a person or a business or an idea. So that's one of the areas you can do. So think and hustle. You don't need money and funding for it. All you need is the agility on who you are approaching. And sometimes I always say, people come with wallets, wallets come with faces. Go meet the face, you'll find the wallet behind it. So it's
Nice.
very easy for you to, you know, don't go and look for money. Go look for a person. Look for what money can do. See, so most of you who are stages in startup, early stage founders, you're looking at probably building a product team, so you want money, right? Or you're looking at customers who will validate the problem or the hypothesis. And technically speaking, you don't need money for that. You just need a bunch of few people who will open that door and start and help you. And in the process, if they really like what you're doing, they'll give you money also, which is surprising, because they'll get so connected to your passion to solve the problem that they will be wanting to be part of the problem solution journey with you. So don't look for money, look for what money can do. And if you look at that approach and look at the next 1 week as not a long, don't look at it as a short time issue, right? People have, I know of a founder, I want to anonymize name. He built a product MVP in 48 hours and received a $1 million funding in 2 weeks
Wow.
after that.
Wow.
And he's around in the region. A few years from now, when he allows me to mention his name, I'll connect you guys. He's in Southeast Asia. But it's just that if you really feel it's a pain point to solve, you can go build it out.
I'm sure that's very, very encouraging to all the participants here. You don't think that this is just a 1 week. This could change your life, right? So work hard on your
Yes.
idea, hustle hard, and don't be afraid to go out and speak with potential users. That's super important, right? Naveen has mentioned that so many times, and I think that LinkedIn outreach part totally resonate with that. I think if it's something that people would even open to respond to you, I think that's a really a good sign that they're willing to talk to you and that you can understand it a lot better. That's a good indicator, right? So be it other platforms that you guys are going out to in this week, be aggressive, hustle hard, and really try to get that conversation. Matthew, any question on your end before you doze off? Because you look really tired. Any question on your end? And because you stayed up for this, right? So any question that you
Sure.
have on Naveen?
Yeah, I feel like in this entrepreneurial environment, often it's maybe better talk about like what not to do instead of like knowing what to do, right? So let's talk about mistakes. Like, what are some common mistakes entrepreneurs made, like in trying to find their product fit in their startup?
So one of the things I tell is, don't look for the next buzzword. So right now, people look for DeFi, crypto, NFT, metaverse. They look for certain, what I call buzzwords. Don't try to solve for a fad. The fad will go, or the fashion idea for now, because it's a 1 to 2 year area. I'm not saying any of these technologies are short term, but what I'm saying is, don't go behind a trend. Go behind a problem that resonates with you. Don't pick it up just because, so there's one point of time when AI ML was, the focus. So every startup decided to rename themselves XYZ.ai, like startup.ai. So just changing the name, looking at that is not exactly go deep into the problem. So I would say that is there. Don't pick a trend that, just because everyone's doing so. So I strongly recommend don't do that. Because the reason why is sustainability and stamina that you have for that problem will go. You should resonate with the problem, because the reason is your ability to sometimes it is a cause, it's a mission, it's a passion, but you have to find something that resonates with you, which has either affected you or disturbed you, or you believe has economic yield, right? You have to go solve for that, and it has to be a cause, because you also have to align your co-founders or your founding team around that idea or a problem to solve. So if you don't go with that, sooner or later you lose stamina, and then you'll go to the next flavor of the season, right? Don't do that. Stick to it over the long period of time. Second is the areas which I've seen is founders are stubborn on the destination, not on the journey. So the reason is they don't decide that just because I have to go there, I'll go through it this way. They could probably go through it different ways, and they're very open-ended, in the way they want to do it. So, for example, Eve says, Navi, like Eve, I trusted you and I just blindly followed you, right? I didn't know whether you're going to take me and push me off the cliff in this call, but you were kind enough to take me to the stage and then made me sit like a small child. So it's also saying that just because I want to get to the stage doesn't mean that I don't put out my hand and reach out to Eve or to Matthew or Matthias or anyone else around who probably knows the way. So don't discount the person around you in the journey. Be stubborn about where you want to go, but don't be stubborn about which way you want to go. So that's the second area which is there. The third area which is there is you are not, don't define your success based on the resources you have today. If your problem is good and you're a great chief problem evangelist, lots of believers will come to solve and resonate with the problem. So don't, let your current surface opportunity resources define how big you can become. You could become, lots of people could come together for you because if they feel this problem is something I gravitate to. So gravity is the third area. The fourth most important thing which is there is sometimes you also can't control every variable. So you got to be learning to adapt. Like you should see the trends. You don't need to know everything about it. So at Amazon, we call it, the principle of dive deep. You should know enough for your business for you to go deep enough, and you should know the guardrails of your business. But you don't need to reach it to a point where you need to know 150% of the data of everything. So go with your gut feel, because there's also an element of gut that's there. You don't need to know everything. So example, next 7 days when you're doing your hypothesis research, you don't need to get 2,632 responses. You get 20 good responses and have a hypothesis is fine. Sometimes, we get so data centric that we forget the objective why we're doing what we're doing. So find, enjoy this phase. It's also a process of self-discovery, because you'll also realize that you maybe, the problem you're identifying with may not be the problem you need to solve, and maybe you'll find another solution in the long run. So maybe, this problem will open a door to a larger problem that's there in store. So don't get emotionally hung up on that one problem. Figure out there could be more ways for you to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. And I think on that as well, right? It also covers, how product market fit is a journey, right? It's not something that you get at the initial outset, right? I think that's also what you're trying to bring out. It is actually a journey. And as you go along, right, you discover more things. And I think the idea is that you should be iterating, right? And refining that process. I don't think any entrepreneur gets it at one shot. I think that 48 hours guy that you just mentioned, I mean, that is really amazing, right? But I mean, the truth is not everyone's going to get it in 48 hours. So I think it's really like a process that you go through. Correct me if I'm wrong, Naveen.
No, not at all. And so one of the other areas which I tell people and friends who've scaled and seen this is have a lot of what I call mind stamina. The physical stamina is secondary, and you need mind stamina from that. So mind stamina tests you, right? Because it questions whether, and the weird part is people who don't need money get money.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not just about in the startup world, but across the world. You'll see that people who don't need money will come and tell you, do you want some more funding? Do you want something? And you say, dude, I don't need. But the challenge is that can you do this on a constant? So the signal you give out to the industry when you have stamina is that you're willing to wait. And when people understand that you're thoughtful and deliberate about the way you're trying to solve it, that attracts a lot of gravity about the kind of person you are. And people tend to believe that this is a long haul marathon, not a short run sprint. And if you're looking at that, that's one thing which is there. And I think in the process, you have to also be willing to unlearn a lot of what things you have, because we may come with biases that based on the view of the world we have. But if our customers say, you know what, you probably are not right, it's okay. It's fine. It's not like, you're going to solve everything. And example is like, see today, always remember that you will take away something from that experience. So I'll give you an example. Today's startup call, weekend call, right? Yeah. I came in, I was called in yesterday. I was on this call, but I'm super. I discovered 4 things, right? Look at the blessings. The blessing was I got to know you, Doman, Matthews, and IMA.
Yeah.
Second, I discovered a platform like this. I discovered Startup Weekend, which I knew a while ago, is yet very, very vibrant and active. And I discovered, the blessing of a new way to engage with customers, right? Like this platform. So if you look at that, I rather looked at in the 60 minutes, I learned so much more. But so if you look at as founders, you have to constantly look for what you're getting out of each person's time you're reaching out to. Many people will pay you different things and pay you in different ways. Just know how you want to ask what you want to get, and you'll get it out. Sometimes don't go into the conversation asking for a POC or a deal or an investment. Sometimes tell them, and I would tell this to everyone here, and this is within this room, is keep your mind open. And when you go out and ask that you can keep a sustainable relationship with the customer you're going and talking in the hustling phase now. So make sure that if the 20 people or 30 people you talk to in the next 1 week, make sure they become part of your journey for life. So be deliberate about who you're going, and make sure they're part of your journey for the next like 5 years or 6 years or whatever else you're trying to solve. So that way you will be also very cautious, because these people will come into your life either as an investor or a customer or a champion or an evangelist. It doesn't matter what, right? They will be part of your journey, and they'll feel proud of being part of your journey. So many a time you are giving them enough purpose as much as they are giving you. So don't be afraid to be you, is what I was trying to say.
Awesome. Yes, Ayumi, do you want to?
All right. Yeah, actually, I do. So I'm going to squeeze two questions into one, because this is probably the last opportunity I'm going to get to ask Naveen a question.
The good thing about the digital platform is you can mute others at every time. I know eBay, you've got a magic button that ensures all of us can shut down. So I'm going to submit it to you as to when you're going to say, Naveen, now the show is over. Now go take a walk.
No, we still have time. We still have time for a couple more questions. So maybe let's have Yami's questions to wrap up. And I think Fahan is
all right.
Yeah, it's also coming up on screen because he wants to raise a question. But let's cover the last two. All right, we still have time for two more.
Okay, so super quickly, everyone's going to be collecting a lot of feedback in this event. How do they know whether it's good feedback or bad feedback?
I need guidance on how to improve my avatar. I think I'm really, really bad on this. I need to improve this guy. So I'll probably call you later, even try and improve my avatar.
No worries. So Naveen, I'm not sure whether you caught Ayami's questions when she asked on feedback. Can you actually hear Ayami?
No, I can't hear.
I see. Okay, because we were wondering why the question keeps. I think maybe because we have too many people on the I think the blue icon there. No wonder. Okay, Ayami. Wait. I think Ayami was asking about feedback, right? Was that correct?
Yes. So I was asking, how do you know if it's good feedback or bad feedback? How do they know from the feedback whether they should pursue that idea or not?
Okay. Naveen, not sure if you caught that, but basically Ayami is asking, how should a participant know whether the feedback given is good or bad, and whether they should act on it or not? Especially now, I know you covered this a little bit earlier when you said about people that pay, but in this case, in a 1 week, they can't really get people to pay for the product. So how can they get skin in the game and get people, assess how credible the feedback is?
So generally speaking, when you actually go across and ask the feedback, you should be a little more deliberate about who you're asking for opinion. So, what you got to do is first is like look at the trend of the industry where you are in, look at the problem statement that you've defined, then go in and identify which segment are you serving, right? Now, example, when you're looking at segment you're serving, there could be 3 different segment players. There could be users of applications. For example, I'll just give an example, hypothetical example. If you're building the next ride-sharing company in the world, example. So you will go to users of existing ride-sharing companies and say, what is the current problem that they have? Then they'll tell you probably surge pricing, or they'll tell you location issues, or they'll say, I want to watch streaming. I want to do something else. Right now, because of COVID, I can't get hitch rides together, or some new problem that they've got. So that's the rider's view of it. Then the driver's view of it. And then probably the brand's view of it, right? The enterprises, because you're saying, okay, maybe I need to pivot and come to it from a different perspective. So using just that theme itself, you need to identify the stakeholders that are there And identifying stakeholders does not mean identifying customers. Stakeholders are people who will either be a customer, an enabler, or a platform aggregator, right? So you need to bring that in and get their input in. So when you are looking at in the next, I would say 7 days, if I had to break it down into daily tasks, I would say the first day of the week, you probably need to identify the segment and the industry you're there and understand who are the key critical stakeholders in that industry, right? And based on the industry, you can find different sets of people, right? You could find individual consumers, or you could find aggregators, or you could find intermediaries, right? And now you find that together. Once in that, you find those that quadrants, then you identify few names, right? And the moment you find few names, and that names you can find to just to search on LinkedIn, you can find some 40 names. What you do is send out mails to 40. You'll get responses from 5 or 8. Make sure you write the subject line in such a nice way that you get a good response, or you reach out to people who know these people, right? Irrespective of whether you do directly or indirectly. And within by day 2, you probably have reached out to them and probably scheduled meetings, which will be on the 3rd day and the 4th day. By the 3rd to 4th day, the 3 things which are there is, first of all, is they're giving you time. That means your problem is resonating.
Yeah.
Right. If they're not responding, that means your articulation of your problem is not good, or the problem is not even worthy in a head. Now, it depends on what it is. So maybe you should check with an intermediary to check why they've not responded. So knowing why they've not responded will give you a signal of what's issue. Is it an articulation issue, or is it a resonance issue? Resonance means, do I really feel about your problem, or maybe because what you're saying, I couldn't understand it, but now since you explained it to me, I want to talk to you. So figure that out in day 3 and 4. By day 5, you will have found what you should do to them is saying, does this problem resonate? If it says yes, then do like a flow chart, right? A very simple function tree. Is you say, would you like to keep in touch with me? Would you like to mentor me? Would you like to give me money? Would you like to be my customer? Would you introduce me to your friends? Any of the 5 options. If they pick any of these 5, there's some skin in the game.
Okay.
And then take their feedback, because the feedback is in context to what it is, and it's a very easy way for you to do that. And then by 6th day, you aggregate it, and day 7, you find patterns across various people you've talked to. And once you find the pattern on day 7, you know what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, that's a super good tip, Naveen. And I really hope that the participants that are listening, as you guys are getting feedback, right, take note of all of these things. And as you're collecting feedback, be intentional about what you're collecting feedback on, right? And I think that will really help you when it comes to shaping your idea. And I know Farhan has joined us on screen because he wants to raise his question to you personally, Naveen. So maybe, Farhan, could you just help us to step on the blue box so that everyone can also hear your question? There is a blue box on the stage. So could you just, awesome. All right, you can unmute yourself and raise your question to Naveen. You'll be the last question for the day because we're running out of time. So over to you.
Thank you for the invitation to come up in the stage.
Hi, Farhan.
Hello, Naveen. Nice to meet you. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Our project is random blocks. Why we come up with the random blocks is because in pandemic COVID-19 make a huge impact for digital artists in Indonesia. So when I'm also a digital artist in Indonesia, when I usually get job 6 until 8 jobs per month, but when it comes up to COVID-19, I get none until 6 months. So for 6 months, I don't have any income for the artwork or digital artist, something like that. So we come with this idea. We make community that we gathering all digital artists in Indonesia, so we can team up with them, so we can share our artworks, and then we can help them how to promote their brands, and then how to sell them art in the NFT. So we already has 3 digital artists in Indonesia at this time, and then we all have the same problem with the pandemic COVID-19, because we don't know how we can sell to the market and then something like that. So is it product market fit in our customer, is it relatable or not? Because our product market fit is our digital artist in Indonesia. I'm sorry for bad English.
No. Farhan, first of all, thank you for asking the question, and I can feel what you've gone through. So I'll just give you a quick set of context, and we can sync offline. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll solve this. Your customer is not the digital artist. Your customer is the customer who will buy the art of the digital artist in different media. It could be in NFT, it could be in digital workspace. So the real customer is the customer outside there who wants to celebrate it. Now, I'll give you an example, right? Historically, Indonesia has been very rich in culture and art, right? You've seen right from batik to a lot of art and artists. So there's inherently design and art thinking in Indonesia, very talented. So one of the areas which is there is, you've rightfully said this, that there is, artists who are there, who are expressing themselves in a digital medium, right? Like you said, and you are going through the pain yourself, and you want an access to customers. The challenge which is there is your customer willing to buy digital art from Indonesia, or is willing to buy digital art from anywhere in the world? Because there are customers who may want to buy art, but actually buy physical art and show it off in their houses and their lobbies of their offices, right? So there are some, so those are not your customers, but what's happening, to your point, rightfully so, is there's a set of customers who are willing to shift and look at art in the digital world. And to that audience is what you should check, whether they are willing to promote or support Indonesian digital artists. So I would recommend you go talk to them, because I'll give, and this could be Indonesian businessmen, or it could be Indonesian startup founders who have made money and who want to support digital art, or it could be digital art globally who are buying it and who are probably not yet looked at Indonesia, right? And probably you as an artist, and along with your other friends who are probably going through a tough time. So I think these three could become, so many times the art is not just the issue. The context of the art is the issue, Farhan. So I'll give you an example, right? When you tell the story of how Indonesia has created artists, and now artists, if you can support digital artists of Indonesia, you're making an impact to this region. There is a purpose behind why I'm investing. I'm not just looking for a return on investment, but I'm looking for a purpose behind it to support Indonesia. So maybe you should look at the customer you're looking at and understand what will drive them. And maybe then you can actually create what I would call a platform, or work with any of the current renditions of digital avatars, and then, so I would say your core issue is that currently COVID has forced you to go from physical to digital, right? Number one. And because you're going digital, your customer may or may not have gone digital. So Farhan, what you need to do is find whether your customer is interested in digital, because you'll have to kind of educate them on the importance of investing in digital art, because then you are a consideration. If they're not interested in digital art, you are trying to give them water when they don't need to drink. So they are not thirsty. So I would recommend that approach. And you can ping me offline, and Eve and the team will connect you, and we could glad to help you in any way, because I strongly believe in the art that you have. But I think your thing is you're aggregating the supply and not the demand.
Farhan is so happy. You look at his face. Yeah, I mean, thanks, Naveen. I think that's all the time that we have. Yeah, but Farhan, I think if you want to be connected with Naveen, feel free. Let us know. I think we're happy to connect you guys and talk further from there. But that's all the time that we have. I really want to thank Naveen for joining us today, and I hope all of you have, definitely been taking down notes, because he shared so many good tips, right? And so really big thanks to Naveen. And all right, I think now we will step off stage.